Hey folks, Lachlan here. Today I'm going to talk about why I believe capitalism to be the most pragmatic or practically useful economic system humanity has ever developed. And I believe this not because I think it's a perfect system. I don't actually think that human beings have the capability to develop a perfect system because we are inherently fallible and flawed creatures ourselves. But capitalism is, for lack of a better term, the best system we have. First, I'm going to discuss some of what I believe to be the most obvious flaws within the system of capitalism, particularly these days. Um, One of the first examples that comes to mind is how, when you think about technology, and particularly the use of software, it's become very difficult these days to buy a program that you want to use and to buy it outright. Almost every company within the tech space seems to have switched to a subscription model instead of allowing you to just pay for something once and use it as you like. They justify this by saying they need the resources to continue to develop and improve the programs you use. But I don't know about you. Uh, in my experience, the cost of an ongoing subscription is almost never worth the so called updates and benefits that these companies provide. And frankly, I think that the overwhelming switch to subscription models purely comes out of greed because these companies, although they are some of the wealthiest in the world, don't seem to ever be happy or ever feel like they've made enough money. They're always looking to squeeze however much more they can out of customers, even if that is directly detrimental to the average customer. They don't care because, particularly within tech, there are just a few companies controlling the majority of the market. So they can afford to go, oh, well, if you don't want to pay a subscription, you don't get to use anything. Because monopolies are a very real thing and very damaging and unhelpful to those who don't have um, vast amounts of disposable income. There's also the fact that many of the international conflicts that occur around the world today always seem to be superficially justified on some moral grounds, whether it's defense of democracy or protecting um, some sort of underdog. But then when you look deeper into why conflicts around the world are actually happening, there always seems to be some sort of financial or territorial gain in mind. So, like wars for oil, or wars for land, or wars for ideological supremacy. And we know for a fact that a huge amount of money is made in war by the companies that manufacture weapons. So they have a direct financial incentive to continue to promote conflicts all across the world because it keeps their bank accounts healthy and fat. So I come at this not thinking that capitalism is infallible and perfect, but I think it's still the best we have simply because if you look at human history, every time there's been a major attempt to make everybody equal by state mandate. That has always failed. It never works because, fundamentally speaking, you cannot make humans equal. Equality itself is an abstract concept that does not exist in the real world. Not even people who are members of the same family are equal. None of us have exactly the same desires. None of us have exactly the same interests. None of us have exactly the same goals. So any attempt to force people to be equal usually just results not in the alleviation of poverty or suffering, but in a compounding of it, and ironically, a concentration of wealth within the ruling class of that system. I see this particularly in South Africa, which is a country that is culturally very open to the idea of a communist um, style of governance, because we have several prominent and powerful communist politicians operating in this country today. But like many communist leaders before them, they will espouse communist rhetoric in parliament during the week, but then spend their weekends at the most decadent capitalist parties and events that you could possibly imagine. One of the most obvious figures who does this is Julius Malema, the leader of the political party known as the Economic Freedom Fighters. The EFF are stated communists who seek, by their own words, to institute essentially full communistic rule. They want to nationalize all land without compensation to the owners and all public institutions. So if they were elected to the presidency, Malema would no doubt seek to establish top-down central control. But you only need to look at history to know that that has never worked. I've been thinking a lot about China lately because China has very close ties diplomatically and politically to South Africa through the BRICS initiative. And as everyone should know, China has been and currently is run by the Communist Party of China. But ironically, Temu, a Chinese business, is one of the most active and well advertised businesses on the planet. I get Temu ads literally several times a day, every day. So even communist China doesn't operate on a fully communistic basis because they tried that and they realized that if you operate on a purely Marxist scale, as Karl Marx outlined in the Communist Manifesto, eventually your society runs out of steam. And so they have very obviously decided that while one side of them will preach the values of communism, they are very much operating within a very predatory capitalist mindset to keep themselves going and to establish a power base around the world. China has become very powerful and very influential within Africa to the point that I firmly believe that China's leader could call South Africa's president, tell him to do something, and whatever he told him to do would quickly be done because a lot of funds that get channeled into the South African political class come from China. But I must once again state that I believe that of all the systems we could have, capitalism, although it is not perfect, at least gives one the shot of being able to work their way up if they are tenacious and resilient enough. Because even under capitalism, it's not easy to be successful. You have to have drive, you have to have work ethic, you have to know what you want, and you have to be willing to earn it. But under a communist society or model, it doesn't matter what you want, doesn't matter what your goals are, because you do not belong even to yourself. You belong to the state, and you do what the leader does. The reason that communist policies, values, and ideas are so common in South Africa is that, strangely enough, uh, communist rhetoric seems to match well with the tribal values that still deeply impact the way many South Africans live their lives. Chiefly the idea that one member of the tribe should not be able to have more than the other member of the tribe does. There's a lot of resentment that you will see within black tribal communities in South Africa if one member of the tribe works their way up and kind of escapes poverty and is able to give their family a better life. There's often claims or insults to the nature of, oh, you're just trying to be white. You think you're better than the rest of us normal black people. Whereas it's very seldom a kind of race based hatred. It's just that more intelligent black people don't want to continue living in communities characterized by poverty and violence. And that is why I believe capitalism is the best avenue to self improvement and improvement of communities as a whole. Because under capitalism, if you are willing to work hard, you will see a reward. It might not be immediate, but the promise of a reward for hard work does exist. I hope that this little ramble of mine has in some way been useful to you, and for now, farewell.